My name is David Pessa. I'm 38 years old and my brand is Facas Island Grill. This is something I always said I was gonna do from high school. It stemmed from growing up in the Midwest and being in an area that wasn't so diverse. I just saw like how mainstream America looked at like ethnic foods and how they perceived like Taco Bell being like authentic Mexican food, or like how Panda Express was looked at as like real Chinese food. And I just thought island food didn't have that representation. I wanted to do something that kind of like bridge that gap. Ideally, we wanted to, represent the islanders and have them be our demographic. But in reality, a lot of our customers are Caucasian and Asian. And that's when it comes to the food. When it comes to the merch, we find that we're typically sending it to islanders, and we can tell because of the name and the area that we're sending it to. We've always been underfinanced, understaffed, inexperienced. I actually won a business plan competition at my school and they gave me like $5,000 to start it up. So with that, it wasn't enough to start a restaurant obviously, but it was enough to buy a taco cart and campfire equipment. And then I just started advertising on Facebook and Craigslist. It kept leading to more events. It was just a huge learning curve because starting out, I didn't have any restaurant experience. It was just learn as you go, like breaking stuff and then learning from that. I have a team that I depend on heavily. I got 2 managers that do a really awesome job. I have my right hand, which is Jono. He's like a process guru. He's all about systems. He's the reason why we're gonna scale so fast. He's just really good at like analyzing like what we do and like finding more efficient ways to do it. And then we have our other manager, Patrick. He's got the most culinary experience. He's worked at every type of restaurant. So he brings that to the table because most of my team, we aren't restaurant guys. We just happen to know how to run a system. My whole thing is I like to hire people off of like your energy, like your vibes. Like you can't teach that. Those are like soft skills. Anybody can go. I can train anybody how to work my system. But when it comes to just being someone that has like good chemistry and good attitude, that's something that they either have it or they don't. I know for a fact I'm gonna change my culture. I think about like culture as a whole. Again, growing up in Missouri, like seeing how different cultures were perceived. I remember back in the day, if you're Asian, you're Chinese, right? They didn't have any subcategories. If you're brown, you're Mexican. And that's just what it was, right? Growing up in 2000s, I remember when the Latino movement was big, and like you hear them saying Latino, 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 right? And like even going back to the Nori song where he's like, he breaks it down. He's like, oh, my Boricuas, my Dominicanos, right? Like Latino was the umbrella. And from the umbrella, you get all the subcategories. But you had to claim that umbrella first. It's like, yo, we're different. That's the whole reason why it's Island Grill, not Hawaiian Grill. Because that's me claiming the umbrella. And then after that, everyone's gonna come after and be able to do something like what they actually are. As a Samoan, I get approached and they're like, why didn't you do a Samoan restaurant? It's like, yo, they're not ready for it. Even looking at like movies, bro. Like I remember when Moana came out. Moana is like Polynesian. Like the whole thing was Polynesian. And then a couple years later, Rock knew like he can take it back to Samoa, but he had to do the umbrella first before he broke it down and be like, this is Samoan. Shit, even with Asian foods, right? Like it was Chinese food. And then through time, people understood like, oh, this pho is Vietnamese, this is something else, this Korean barbecue, this is from Korea. And like for the longest time, all Asian food was Chinese. That's what I know I'm gonna be able to do. And like for my people, it's like a lot of people don't own businesses or they don't see that as a path. Like we see football players, we see family members go in the military, and it's like we know that as a path to be like we actually do. So to break that wall and be like, yo, like we can do this too, like that's gonna be big. Because it's like Nelson Mandela has a quote, like everything's impossible till someone does it. I don't know if I said that right, but it's basically what it breaks down to, right? And a few years ago, you had Samoan quarterback was like not a thing until you had Marcus Mariota win the Heisman. And then after that, like a couple years later, you had Tua from the same high school because he saw that as a path. And then now you got all these other Samoan quarterbacks. And it's just like, man, that was what, 2016 to now. But it's like our people needed to see it as a pathway before they realized like that's possible, I can do that too. And the main thing is just keep going, like don't give up. It's definitely not a sprint, it's a marathon like Nipsey said. You just keep showing up and things will happen. But like more of the like everyday stuff, I actually like Ralph Lauren because it's like it never goes out of style. It has its moments where we're super in style, but then it's like people always wear it regardless, right? And then I'm a huge Dickies fan. Like Dickies is another thing that just never like goes with everything, it never goes out of style. Like I'm really big about like buying one thing and just having it for a long time, and I buy the same shit over and over. Like the OG Neons, I've had a few pair of those. I buy them from resale all the time. I don't like rocking things that are gonna go out of style. Stussy still looks the same as it did in the 90s, and that's why I fuck with it. Same thing with Ralph Lauren. Yeah, we're gonna do another Facas. That one's gonna be a partnered location with one of my managers. That's my big vision of Facas. I wanna give people a shot that don't necessarily have the means, because like that's where I was at. So I got like this whole vision of like how we're gonna grow it with like minimal finances. There's like a lot of DIY stuff that we're gonna incorporate, and I think that's just gonna be a part of the brand as we grow. And then just giving like young and hungry entrepreneurs a shot at doing it. There's a fallacy about restaurants that they have a high failure rate, and that's not the case. It's actually the fact that people who get financed for a restaurant aren't restaurant people. They make their money somewhere else, and then they're like, hey, I have fuck off money, I can come in and go open up a restaurant, right? But then you have people who've worked in the restaurant industry who know how to work a restaurant, but they can't get the financing. So my thing is, I don't want to take money from investors who wouldn't like really appreciate it because they already got money. I'd rather grow my company with people who really want it and deserve it. This is organic. I mean, we've been doing this for 10 years. So I had a bet with my manager, right? So manager John was like, yo, you gotta tell the story. My whole thing was I was trying to stay off the camera. It's the thing about coming with being Samoan, there's this analogy, and I know it goes for other cultures, but it's the crabs in the bucket mentality. I knew if I were to get in front of the camera, I would have my people like kind of tear me down. To me, that hurts the most. I got family that live in the area, never come to my restaurant. You know, to be truthful, it hurts. And so I didn't want to go on camera and tell my story and then them not fuck with it. But I had a bet with John. He was like, look, we're gonna do video of the food, we're gonna see how well it does, and we're gonna do a video of you just talking and telling your story. Well, we did that, and sure enough, the story stuff is the shit that took off. We did like one day of shooting where he was just asking me questions, because he already knew the answers, and he was like, yo, this is a dope story, you should tell this story, you should tell this story. And then that's what really started to resonate with people, and that's how we grew organically. Because there's so much shit that we have been through. That's another thing with us, it's like, if it's not meant to be, like, we wouldn't be where we are right now, because there's so many things of like, it shouldn't have worked, but like, shit just kept like working out in our favor. It's like every setback, we ended up like flipping it around and making it work. I view like where we're at right now as our mixtape era. I'm a huge hip hop fan, and like I use like hip hop as like an analogy. And like one of the things is like I remember when, you know, like Kendrick and like J. Cole and all these artists were coming up and they were dropping like mixtapes, and it's like they were sharpening their skills before they came out with their classic. And like I feel like that's where we're at right now. My message would be, you don't have anything, like use what you got. There's this clip from Hustle and Flow that I always go back to. There's a part where he's talking to Ludacris and he was like, it's not enough for a man to climb Mount Everest. They need to do it with the least amount of tools as possible. And then he goes on to say, it's not about the size of the dog in the fight, it's about the size of the fight in the dog, right? And so it's like, that's us, like 100%, because it's like, all right, we didn't have a deep fryer to begin with. It's like, all right, but I had a campfire stove and I got a wok that I could put oil in, and that's gonna be my deep fryer. So it's like, even if you don't think you have enough, use what you got. You know what I mean? Like, this is some prison shit. Like, I'm gonna duct tape and zip tie this shit together. You know what I'm saying? I think people get held up with thinking that they need certain things to start, and it's like, nah, just fucking start.